Hello to all our listeners. I welcome you to the second session of 3 on the theme of organic, but not only, sustainable through a holistic approach. I'm Leora Levy, a sommelier from Norway, and before we start, we'll just release a survey that you'll see on the screen. We would like to know where you come from and in what sphere you work. This poll is open for the next minute. This seminar is live on AdVini Quebec Facebook page and broadcast on the YouTube channel AdVini Diffusion. At my side, I have Carmen Echeverry, responsible for sustainable development at AdVini, and she will be intervening with her expertise on the topics we're covering today.
Hi all. For those who don't know us yet, AdVini is a French leader of terroirs vine. Our vineyards estates embrace all the know-how of the vine industry on very beautiful terroirs in France and in South Africa. We are in vine heritage of 2,200 hectares in production spread over 20 chateaux. Our vineyards all share the same philosophy, the same master word, passion and ambition to preserve and to magnify our terroir.
We want to give a voice to the winemakers, the women and men who shape the wines and who embody a common philosophy. Our theme of the day was designed to discuss the environmental practices of our winemakers or your AdVini's winemakers and put them in perspective. Over the next hour, I will take turns asking questions to the winemakers. All your questions can be asked on the chat, and at the very end, we'll answer your questions. Unfortunately, choices will have to be made, but I would like to thank anyway to Carmen and Hélène and Julie and Titian for doing all the back office work and gathering all your comments and questions. But first, let's welcome our 4 winemakers from 4 very different regions. And welcome to Grégory Viennois from Chablis, Technical Director of Domaine La Roche.
Hello.
Hi, Greg.
Hello.
We have Dimitri Bazaz, winemaker of Maison Champy in Bourgogne.
Hello.
Hi, Dimitri. We have Dirk Kotze, winemaker at L'Avenir in South Africa.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
Hi, Dirk. And finally, Emmanuel Caz of Domaine Caz in Roussillon.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you all for being with us this Monday. Carmen, maybe you can tell us a few words about the current situation at AdVini in terms of sustainable development.
Yes, before getting into the heart of the debates, few elements of context. AdVini began its ecological transition policy just over a decade ago with the aim of training all of its vineyards toward ambitious environmental certifications. Today, we are here. I'm rather than proud to drop this assessment since 2019 vintage. All our surface are engaged in organic conversion, certified organic, biodynamics, HEV for high environmental value, the highest level of French certification carried by the French government, or IPW for integrated production of wine. That's the environmental certification of wine industry in South Africa. The balance is here. 100% of the South African vineyard is IPW, and 76% of the French vineyard are organic or in conversion, 74% in HEV. Well, after these few numbers, let's go to the vineyard to see what we put behind these organic practices, but not only organic.
Thank you, Carmen. Great observation indeed. Behind it, there were beginnings. Emmanuel, your father, Bernard, started working biodynamically more than 20 years ago. At that time, no rules existed. You were the only ones in Roussillon to engage in these practices. You've had to go through several challenges, I'm sure. Our listeners know the basics of biodynamics. I think it's a dream come true for that part of the magic that is given to it. But in fact, what are the factual impacts, root lengthening, microbiodiversity, work and light supply that you see in the vineyards? And please tell us about what is found in the 3 basic preparations.
Well, turning into biodynamic culture is a long process. In fact, we made some choice because we're facing some new problems, some new disease. Actually, we've seen that the classical chemistry didn't have any answer to the problem that we were facing. So we decided to work in a different direction. And this is how we've been curious. We have some good feedback about biodynamic culture. And, we moved away from the binary logical, which is I have a disease, I'm spreading against the disease. The concept of biodynamic culture is try to avoid the disease. So it means working on the natural welfare of the plant, trying to have a living soils, and then everything that's going to grow on this kind of soil is going to be more able to face the stress of the disease and the stress of the climate. So that was the concept of biodynamic culture. Then this is why we make the choice. In fact, I think it's more like a wood farmer sense. This is how we move into this way of production. Of course, 20 years ago, we didn't have any big information. We've been helped by some people, but we have to find out a lot of things by ourselves. But it was very interesting. And today it's quite easily, of course, we can be very mystic or esoteric when we're talking about biodynamic culture, but also we can be very pragmatic. And this is the way we are applying here in Casa. We're using those famous composts. There are 3 of them. 2 of them are made out of cow manure. They make some longer roots. They help to change more and to have more organic matter in the soil also. And thanks to this, also we can have a better connection between the plant and the soil. So it's also useful to have the real expression of the terroir. So there are 2 major products which are made out of cow manure that have been composted in specific conditions. And there is a 3rd one, which is a brush crystal, which is very useful on the opposite to bring back light in the middle of the plant. So it's also very interesting. And the last thing about those products is that it has to be dynamized first before being spread. And thanks to this, we are exchanging the information of the product, which is a hard part, to the liquid that's going to be used by the plant or by the so something very particular. I think everyone has to get into this way of production and slightly make his own experience. And step by step, I can assure you it works properly.
Well, I've seen your soils for myself, Emmanuel, and they look very, very healthy. Well, you've been doing this for years, and obviously it's working. So I understand very well why you decided to convert in the first place when you can see what actually happened through the years. Dimitri, in 2005, Pierre Masson was Maison Champy's advisor for the transition to biodynamics. Between winemaker graduated at the University de Bourgogne in 1988 and the man of today practicing the principles of biodynamics methods, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what convinces a scientist like you were, who was trained in the great years of enology, to invest in a practice of biodynamics?
Yes. So at the beginning, I was, as everybody, an enologist and a winemaker with this very scientific approach. And in the beginning of my career, I had the chance to be a winemaking consultant for estates in Burgundy who have been the pioneers of biodynamic. So in the 90s, so for me it was my curiosity who has been awaked, and it gives me motivation to do trials with these estates. And I have seen, I have observed differences, significant differences between the biodynamic wines, let's say, and conventional wines. So when I entered Champy in June '99, one of my ideas was to continue to do all these trials. Let's say for a scientist or somebody who has a very theoric and scientific background, I don't want to be poetic, but there is a French guy, Rabelais, who says that science without consciousness is the ruin of the soul. So let's say I wanted to find my human soul. So I tried to forget a little bit all these theories, and I did trials, which is definitely empiric way of doing things. And it's as the old wine growers they did with observation. And the positive thing is that with our winemaking scientific background, we know a little bit to explain all these things. And I think at the end, it's only good common sense, agricultural and craft work in the cellar. So I think for Burgundy, the right thing is to have an artisanal approach.
But you've had some of these experience. Maybe you have an example or two to show us what the effects of biodynamic practices bring to the wine.
Yes, for example, to be a little bit factual, and of course I forgot at the beginning, we take advantage of Pierre Masson, who was a real master, and what we liked with the approach of Pierre Masson was this kind of pragmatic and realistic approach, and it's not only philosophy and spiritual things. So one of the things we tested and we had differences was, for example, the application of a 501, which is the silicate, the quartz horn. Maison Champy has 21 hectares, and the majority are behind the hill slopes of Corton Charlemagne. So we have many parcels of Pernan-Vergelès. And for example, let's take the example of Corton Charlemagne. We have half an hectare, but it's completely northwest facing, which is very cold. So we have to wait in order to get the ripe grapes of Chardonnay. The application of the 501 give us a quick ripeness. So it was a positive thing. Another factual experience and trials are, for example, the racking during going down and waning moon. So we have a more clear wine. Another trial, for example, is to do bottlings by gravity during a fruit day. And I think we have to understand that if we have 15 filtrations and we do a bottling a fruit day, we don't have the expected impact. On the other hand, if you are you anticipate and you use all these rhythms during the whole life of the wine, you can have a good result, because for me, respecting all these rhythms, you can have a significant difference. And I will finish with something more, let's say we talked about maturing in barrels, but right now, let's say the impact in the transformation. For example, when I have barrels who are no more fermenting because we don't inoculate at Champy, at the beginning, we leave with the natural yeast to do the fermentation. And from time to time, we have barrels and yeast, natural yeast, who are a little bit lazy. So we have to inoculate. I have observed that when you do an inoculation a morning near to a full moon, you have the 99%, you are successful, and you restart and you finish your sugars as it has to be.
It must be very interesting to actually see how this works, not only in theory, but also in practical or in real life. We're going to travel all the way to where spring and summer is coming. Dirk, to you in South Africa. Apparently, Africa has the oldest soil in the world. Tell me more about that and how that affects your vineyard.
Thank you, Liara. Yeah, it's definitely it's honest. It's what it is. South Africa, and Africa's got really old soils. If you look at Africa being across the tropics, the equator, and also South Africa in the past being a subtropical climate, you really know that these areas are not really known for glaciation activities or any volcanic activities. And these two activities, at the end of the day, with the debris that they normally put on the land, they normally create new soil, as we call it. And this didn't happen in Africa itself, which means that our soils were lying there uninterrupted. They weren't even affected by the ice age, uninterrupted for a long time. So this is how you build up, or this is how you get to all the soils. That you need time and you need uninterrupted time for these soils to weather. And this is exactly what happened in Africa. What do we get from these older soils as we know it? And the more diverse soils, I would say, is I'll just mention three of them. First of all, you get soils which are very hard and very tight. The other thing that you do get is that the soils are very acidic for the fact that most of the cations has moved through the soil profile, as you can see there on the right-hand side with the Belafonte soil profile, a very good example of that. And you also get soils which are very much low in nitrogen, carbon, and organic matter because of the movement, because of the weathering that took place over time. Also, climatic-wise, Africa are exposed to long hours of really, I would say, sometimes a bit of harsh sunlight and radiation. And in this area where we farm in Stellenbosch, we also get humidity. So normally with radiation that you get from sunlight and humidity, you lose a lot of your carbon in your topsoil. Okay, so what do we normally do to prevent these things from happening or to enhance the soils to get new organic matter into the soils? First of all, when you've got a hard or tight soils, you need to do proper soil preparations beforehand. And I also mentioned that we've got acidic soil. So when you do the soil preparation before you plant, you need to add some lime during your preparation, and you need to do it quite deep. A lot of people that have burned their hands with that, they think, oh man, you know what? I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to just open it up with plants. It doesn't work all the time. You know, this is Africa. It's tight soils, it's hard soils. The other thing is, what do we do with our nitrogen and carbon? First of all, I would like to just mention on the hard soils that we make use of a cover crop called koorog. Koorog is called Triticale, and Triticale is a mixture between triticum, which is wheat, and rye. This cover crop is amazing. It's got a deep root system and a big root system and also a big biomass. So what do you get from that? It really opens up our tight soils in order for water and for light or oxygen to infiltrate at the end of the day, and also to get good, I would say, biomass or plant material, organic material in there. And then there's another thing that we make use of, and that is called crown veg. We call it Vika. So crown veg is a low-growing legume or a vine, and it grows just on top of the surface of the soil. And what do we want from that? We want it to nitrificate. We want it to put back carbon and nitrogen into the soils. But at the end of the day, it needs to form a layer on top of the soil to prevent any, I would say, verdamping, evaporation of your water, to preserve your water, but at the end of the day, also to put nitrogen back into the soils. So this is what we normally make use of in an organic way to promote our soils and to make them alive and happy again.
I love the complexity of the soil and everything you've had to learn to how to treat it actually and make it prosper like it is. How do you come about figuring out which plant to use, which one can actually penetrate the hard soils and give more nutrition and acid? It's very, very interesting.
It's very interesting, Liara. I know this is not part of, I'm just going to say quickly, but some of these plants are actually native to Africa. If you look at something like crown veg, Vika, it's a native plant, is what we get in the nature itself, in our natural habitat. So we just commercialize that and make use of it in our vineyards itself.
Nice. Cool. Let's move back to Europe. We're going to Chablis. Gregory, next question for you. Several actions have been taken to enhance the philosophy of Domaine La Roche in terms of very hard word for me, agrological viticulture. Can you tell us about the pillars of this philosophy with organic amendments, biological control, and sowing?
So first, agroecological viticulture, just to explain what it is, it's like a fusion viticulture. That means we take the best of each management. That means we use some biodynamical practices. We use organic one also, but it's more global because we take care of many parameters, as oil consumption, water consumption. That means it's and human resources also. We have 4 very important pillars, and that means it's 4 very important key points of our philosophy. First is like in for Emmanuel or Dirk or Dimitri, it's all the organic amendments. That means the fertilization of the soil, the natural fertilization of the soil. It's the first factor of the good health of the soil and the vineyard. Second pillar is biological control. That means we have many ways to work with it, with different teas. So it depends. You need to have a lot of observations also. The third, which is very connected with the first 2 pillars, is the sowing. Sowing, I will explain later what it is, and the 4 pillars. It's the massal sedation. That means it's the sedation of old genetical vines. So that means to resume, it means respect for the source. It means looking for the perfect balance in our viticulture and its environment. We are looking for increasing the biodiversity. It's right for the soil, but also for the biodiversity all over the landscape. Preserve the natural resources. Importance of the know-how. That means a lot of research and development, a lot of experimentation. So I think it's a good complementary with empirism. And so what is very important also, it's the limitation of wine in France. That means it's at the end of the process. But I think it's what we are looking for. It's to produce the more natural wine. Just some points about the fertilization. So that means it's organic amendments. Now I think it's not no more news. We know that the effect of organic enrichment on earthworm activity on soil structure is no more to prove, and we can see it. That means there is some analysis, but also we can see it, and I think it's a good way to work and to try to anticipate the global warming. It's to have a good structure of the soil, to have the capacity to keep the rainfall, the humidity, and then I think it's in one of the very important of our adaptation. Third, for biological control, as I said, we use a lot of biodynamic practices, but also we develop all the biocontrol, and so it's to try to find a good balance to produce a good quality without any disease, but also to manage how many spray per year we do. That means it's to try to find the perfect balance. And so the weeds we use, it's exactly the same. It's the first step to increase the biodiversity, and we try to use all the weeds like a green manure for the soil.
Yeah, luckily people all over the world are finally understanding that it is very important that we think about what we put in our soils and in our vineyards and in our wine and everything, because, well, the results are showing already if we don't care anymore. So luckily you guys are all there already, which is great. Back to you in South Africa, Dirk. In organic farming, we often see a lot of cover crop between the rows of vines. I understand that in South Africa, you have challenges with this. The typical cover crops used elsewhere in the world don't work well in your country. So what is Lavinier doing to implement organic farming other than working with cover crop?
Yeah, like you mentioned, we make use of the cover crop, but that's not all of it. Definitely, we release some birds in order to take care of the mealybug. We've got nice owl posts up to take care of rodents. And like Gregory just said, we always try to less our spray cycles. At the end of the day, most of the farmers, they sometimes use even 10 to 11 spray cycles. We try to keep it at about 5 to 6 by just monitoring it very well. And then the other thing that I've been doing the last 8 years is herbicide spot treatment. So no more herbicides just being sprayed wherever you want to spray it, really spot treatments if it's really needed. Something which is totally out of the line is shoveling, literally by hand, and also weed eating or bush cutting. A lot of my neighbors, whenever they see me bush cutting, they're like, "Dirk, are you crazy?" You know, but for me, it's about the holistic feel. And I think if you can get into the vineyards and you've got wheat that's not been weeds, that's not been overgrown by your wheat that you've sowed, and you cut these weeds before they flower, over time, you'll realize that you'll take control of the weeds. So just before it flowers, take it off or cut it with your weed eater, and you'll see that you'll have less weeds going forward. I've been doing it for 8 years now, and I can see slowly but surely it's working. And the other thing is with our climatic factors, and Gregory also mentioned it, you want to keep your humidity in your soils. So we try to do minimum tilling. So without tilling or less tilling, I would say there's less pressure on the soil because of the tractor. So you really preserve your microbes, but also you're preventing your topsoil to be exposed to sunlight that will get rid of your, will at the end of the day mean evaporation. So you can see those beautiful photos, how thick the cover crop is. In order to cover up those soils when we roll them down, they're really like a beautiful mattress. I always say when you look at soil, you drive over it with a four-wheeler or with a tractor if you need to. It needs to be like a sponge, like a mattress. It needs to go in and then it needs to flip back into its position. Then you know you're doing well. And then we also make use of beautiful chicken manures and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, it's a holistic feel for me. Whatever you take out, you need to put back, and even put back more than what you've taken out.
That's a healthy approach. I must say, it sounds quite a big job to cut the weeds. How big is your estate?
Our estate on this side is 40 hectares. So you can imagine with 40 hectares, and then I also do another estate, which is another 40 hectares. So that's about 110 hectares, but it all makes sense at the end of the day.
I do understand why your neighbors go like, "Wow, you're crazy, doing all that all the time." Emmanuel, could you tell us about prophylaxis at Domaine Caz? That's quite interesting too, I've heard.
Yes, well, it's a bit of everyone's answer. I think prophylaxis, it's a kind of silent work. In fact, you're making choice, and each of them, step by step, is going to have a huge impact on the quality of your work. You know, as long as when you're beating up blocks, you have to choose the right rootstock, you have to choose the right varieties, you have to adapt itself to your soil, to your environment, to everything. So it's lots of, as I told you, a lot of different small choices that has a huge impact at the end. You take care of a lot of different elements. Of course, we talked a lot about cover crop, but of course it brings a lot of good things to the soil, but also in this area full of weeds and so on, you're going to have a lot of insects, a lot of small animals, you're going to have a lot of worms that are going to work also. They're going to be very useful for the terroir. And so it's lots of different choices that we're doing on the blocks, surrounding the blocks also by putting back some bush trees also. That's going to be the host of natural species. For example, we're using those nest box. You're going to have the one which is just behind me. This one is dedicated for bat, and can assure you the most common bat that we have here in Europe is about that big, but it's able to use 1 kilo of insect a year. So this is what step by step, by adding all those different methods of working, it's going to have a huge impact. Another example is here we have a major wind that blows quite often, which is called the tramontane, which is the land wind. So it's a very dry wind. And in fact, we're planting all our rows are planting on the opposite of the way of the way the wind blows, just to help this wind to go through the vines and dry out everything. So it's it's a farmer choice that we are doing just by seeing things, looking around, and of course we're trying to have enough room for nature to express itself naturally. Yes, naturally in the vines. So we trying to have some better condition, and thanks to this we can decline the amount of products that we're using while we're spreading. For example, when we are organic, we're using a lot of copper usually, but today at CAS we're using less than 1 kilo of copper a year, which is very low. It's just a quarter of what the European limit is, because like you're seeing on the picture, we're using also plant teas. So it's not exactly biodynamic culture, but it's something that goes with this, because we are a little bit more open-minded when we are biodynamic. We're getting curious and we making some tests and develop some different methods that all of them all together are very useful. So it's a global choice. In fact, we don't only taking care of the plant, but as I told you, the whole ecosystem. We're taking care of the biodiversity, but also the micro biodiversity that we have in the land.
Super important, all of that. I've never heard about the bats before. Interesting. Gregory, at Domaine La Roche, the sense of duty of transmission is present. You received, and now it's your turn to pass on. How is this legacy preserved for future generations? Among your practices in viticulture, muscle selection is also a way to keep the memory of this heritage. Oh, Greg, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
It's fine.
So it's a very important point of our philosophy. Domaine La Roche has a million years old history. So Chablis is a very old vineyard. The monks were here during the Middle Age, and they have developed a lot of knowledge. It's a huge legacy, and we have to transmit it. That's why all the actions we have in the vineyard, we have to keep in mind that it has a crucial impact for the next generation. When we plant a new vines, it's not for the next 20 years, it's for the next 70, 20, or perhaps more years. It's a very important point. It's why at Domaine La Roche, the selection of the vine is so important. For example, for old vines die after to have plugging out, we wait more than 3 years before to plant a new one. So a lot of growers use clonal selection. It's very easy. You pass an order in the nursery and you select the root stock and the number of clone, and so it's 3 months after you can plant a new one. What we did at La Roche, and we started the massal selection in 2012, is to try to select the old genetical patrimony, heritage, in our old vines. Why? Because it's a question of observations. We observe that there is more resistance against disease with old vines. There is more resistance against the hydric stress during the summer, and also because we do grapes for quantity, of course, but also for quality. We observe that the skins in the old genetical vines are thicker. That means there is more dry extract, there is more minerals, there is more antioxidant and phenolic compounds. It's a very important for the rest of the winemaking process because with those grapes, you need less sulfate because there is all the natural antioxidants to protect it. So that's why it's a huge plan, because you need a lot of time. It's more than 5 years to observations, and after you have, and it's what we have a very strong partnership with 2 nurseries, and now we are in capacity to plant a part of our new vineyard with these massal selections. That means we can imagine that it's our legacy, and we will transmit it to the next generations.
Well, that also shows how important it is to pick the right plants, and even that is probably very time consuming, I would guess. All these practices in the vineyards and in the cellar are in the direction of improving our environmental impacts. But it's not just that, Carmen. Maybe you can shed some more light.
Yes, when we talk about agroecological transition, we often think first about environmental issue, but indeed it's not just that. At AdVini, we increase our commitments from concern that were initially really environmental to a dimension of corporate social responsibility. That means assuming our societal responsibility, being committed to all the impacts that AdVini can have, positive or negative, on nature, on our teams, on our territories, and our sector. It therefore means becoming aware of the effect of our business and acting in a coordinated way to reduce our negative impacts and develop our positive impact. So for us, this goal will only be achieved through commitment of all based on adherence to a project that makes sense for all the employees. It was really at the beginning in the DNA of our companies, but we are formalizing it little by little and setting goals on these new issues.
Good, thank you. Dimitri, back to Bonn. We know that organic and biodynamic farming requires more manual work and attention from your teams. Is it a challenge to set them on this path?
Yes. So just a reminder, in order to go through biodynamic, you have to have this approach, which is organic, no more chemicals, no penetrants, no systemic products. So it has to be an organic approach, either certified or not, but then you can go through biodynamic. So at the beginning in 2005, for us, it was a little bit, it was a project that had to be approved by all of the members of our team, the employees. So it was at this period, biodynamic was a bizarre, weird thing. So people they thought it was a voodoo. We are I don't know what we are doing in the fields. Right now, it's a little bit more familiar. So our approach with Pierre Masson as a consultant was everybody was implicated. So, and of course, by the fact we are a small domain, and the particularity that Burgundy is, you can have 21 hectares, but we have 80 different parcels from Volnay to Pernan-Vergelès. So it's only manual applications. And of course, the moment you are going to apply and to spray a 500p or a 501 is, for example, late in an afternoon, in the afternoon, or very early in the morning. So it's a little bit more work, manual work. But I think people right now are actually our employees. They are. We don't have any difficulties no more to convince them to go to this path, and the approach is as a very qualitative and very honest agricultural method of doing things. So and of course the same thing when we are doing all these things in the cellar. it's only all the cellar masters skills that Burgundians they did for centuries.
I mean, I guess more and more people are familiar with different biodynamic practices these days. And I mean, 10 years ago, I think most people would say was, I don't know if it was voodoo, but it was very, very strange at least. But I guess with more and more people practicing this this philosophy, it gets not only familiar, but also more appreciated by so many people. Yeah, Dimitri.
And the last thing is, everybody who goes through biodynamic, nobody comes back, which for me, it's the most positive thing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't think I've heard one about someone who converted to bio and then never went back. Anyway, let's move on. I think this is also a very nice thing that you have in La Roche. Over the 35 of the 35 workers you have in the vineyard, Gregory, they each take care of a plot. A few of them are in their 25th vintages at the Domaine La Roche. Can you tell us more about the care given to the vine by this parcel approach, like one person, one plot?
Yeah, it's we said one man, one plot because we have 35 vine growers. Each of them is dedicated to specific plots, and it's like this every vintage. You can imagine that each worker is taking care of its own vine from the pruning to the harvest, and it's like this sometimes for more than 25 years. We said before that it's a global concept, and without any human people and without any observations and knowledges, you do not think it's an important point, because you can imagine that each of them transmit a lot to the new growers, and they take care very strongly of each block. So it's there is like a specific intimacy that means both the growers and the vine. It's very important for us because you can imagine during the season they can revert to us very quickly and say, oh, I have observed a currency, have observed a problem with disease. That means there is a direct feedback from the vineyard. It's not the same when you had 10 or 15 growers in the one block. You can imagine there is like a competition here. It's like a garden.
Yeah, and talking about giving everyone there to take care of their babies.
Exactly.
I mean, if you follow a vine for 25 years, they're your babies.
They can be proud about their job after the season. It's not a job which is done in staff. It's their own job, and we can observe it. And I think it's a very good thing for us.
I think it sounds like a perfect thing, both for the vines, but also for the people who take care of them.
Yeah.
More people should do that.
Nope.
Emmanuel, the Roussillon is moving into a semi-arid zone with the effects of climate change. Is biodynamics one way for you to adapt to this reality?
Yes, completely. In fact, yes, I've been doing this job for more than 20 years already, and I've seen some slightly change. We're facing every year some more and more extreme weather. It could be hot, it could be dry, it could be windy, it could be wet sometimes. But what we can see is by having a living soil, so rich of life, rich of a lot of different elements. We can see that the vines are able to stand this dryness or this hard condition. The precepts of the biodynamic products is, as I told you, is make roots longer. So step by step, your vine is going to take water and nutriment deeper in the soil, and so thanks to this, they're going to be less touched by the difference of the vintages. For example, we don't have any dilution on wet years and many concentration on drier. It balance everything step by step. The other thing is, we heard when we talked about cover crop, is we're going to have more and more organic matter, and even if we raising 1 or 2 more percent is enough to store more water, more humidity, and to balance everything. And for us, what I can see is, whether if we've been through more and more hard year, we have some better pH, and it's very useful because all our wines are getting fresher year after year. So by using all those different methods, we're considering the soil completely differently, and thanks to this, we can stand this hard period that we are moving ahead. It's something very particular, but I think Bionic Culture is a good response to a good answer to this problem.
And are these your babies, Emmanuel?
Yes, it was. No, yes, it was. We used to welcome. This is a bit of prophylaxis also. We used to welcome every winter in some very specific blocks a few 200 of sheep every year, and they're very useful because they eating the grass. Of course, they're giving a natural manure, and specifically on those blocks that are quite productive, we need to have a total. The soil need to be covered by the grass all year long, and thanks to this we can cut this grass quite easily and without touching the vine. So it's something very, very interesting, and as I told you, it's one of the small things small details that change the result at the end.
I agree. Dirk, there is a somewhat odd challenge South African producers face when it comes to converting to organic farming. What is the future for organic farming in South Africa?
First of all, by listening to the rest of the guys, we know that it's going to take time and it's going to take hard work. I just wrote it down to convert. But luckily, we know that's part of viticulture. So we need to take the time and need to make the effort. And then also looking at technology and innovation. Greg just mentioned, having plant material. We also did that at Vineyards. We isolated some plant material from block number 30. It's an old block of Chenin Blanc, 47 years old. And we really thought that maybe these vines, the ones that you see on screen, they've changed genetically. And how can we capture these changes in order to be drought resistant and all of these other factors that we need to take care of on a daily basis, or we have to upfront to a certain extent. So by using great technology, you can also get closer to being holistic. But also, when you work for a place like AdVini, you've got guys like Emmanuel and Dimitri and Greg, that it's already been set. The path is already there, and you will have to follow. And it's great to be part of this team of AdVini. But for the industry, I would say, yes, there is scope. There's scope for change. And we've got beautiful smaller estates, which I would always recommend to these guys. If you want to be a specialist in what you do, especially in your vineyards, and you just saw today, it starts in the vineyards, you can really set out certain plots, smaller plots, start with that. When you get the hang of it, start to move across and make it part of your protocol, make it bigger. Until you get to a point where you can easily sleep at night. At the end of the day, it's what you leave behind, your heritage, and you want to leave something which is rich and healthy. I always say what I benefit from today is what's been done before me most of the time. So I think in that sense for us at Vineyards and at Lebanon, it's what we leave behind needs to be healthy. I want the next generation to really benefit from what myself and the rest of the team did today.
Well, I guess one is all about heritage, right?
True.
And the last foil we saw there, the picture of the tree, is that the same tree that's behind you, Dirk?
No, that's exactly the same tree. It's a very iconic tree for Vineyards. It used to be a tree before I got a kid, where me and my wife used to drink a lot of sundowner. So we've got a beautiful deck around the tree. But I love to take people there. I love to show them the soil because, it's our famous block. It's our iconic block block number 2 on top of the hill. So we've got a little tractor that we normally take our guests up there, and I can explain to them exactly why it's so beautiful and why it's so close to heart.
Well, it sounds like a good plan when we're allowed to travel again. I'm up for a sundowner.
Please do.
And the view. Good. Before we conclude and go to questions, I would like you to present us with a wine that is representative of your working philosophy in less than a minute. Emmanuel, which wine is your go-to wine?
Well, there are wines that yes, I didn't took the bottle, sorry for this, but the wine that I want to present is a John wine, which is a non-sulfite wine that we used to produce for more than 5 years. That I think is the exact end of all our works. We are organic, we are biodynamic, and now we are able to work without any sulfur. This vintage 2020, there is a third of our world production has been vinified without any sulfur. And so I think it's the next interesting step that we have to get into, because people want to have a real expression of the terroir, and organic and biodynamic culture is very helpful for this.
Yeah, and obviously the people who were watching, they didn't see the bottle, and if you didn't hear what Manuel was saying, he was talking about the wine that's called John wine.
John wine, yes.
So
John
it's a funny play on word as well.
Exactly.
And it's your first non-sulfate wine, right?
Yeah, the first one, but we have a huge success with this. Now we have declined 3 or 4 different cuvées, and it's going to increase, of course.
Very nice. What about you, Gregory? Which one is your go-to wine representing your philosophy?
If you asked me the same question last week, it was Grand Cru Les Blanchots.
That's what I was expecting today too.
But today it's Chablis Saint-Martin. Because we are, next
Is it
Wednesday.
Day today?
Yeah, no, next Wednesday. So it's a very important day. It's in France. It's the end of the first global war. It's why we don't know very well the Saint-Martin Day. But at La Roche we honor it every year everywhere in the world. So why Saint-Martin? Because Saint-Martin it's not a single vineyard selection, but Saint-Martin is done with the best single vineyard selection. We have a famous one which is Vieille Voix, which is like the soul of Saint-Martin, and we have a part of Saint-Martin which is done in very old food. It's no new at all. It's 55 hectoliters food, and we use it for the old vines. That means Saint-Martin is a very complex Chablis with a very strong structure of minerals. There is a texture, and there is a specific finish. You can taste the limestone and the earth of Chablis. So Saint-Martin, Domaine La Roche.
Thank you, Greg. Apparently winemakers have a different opinion on what one sentence means, but okay. Dimitri, how about your go-to wine?
So I'm going to be faithful to Beaune. So it's the same wine that I presented last week. So Beaune Premier Cru, Au Cras, which is one of a single vineyard, 0.42 hectares, 250 meters elevation above the sea level, exposure east, southeast, and the subsoil is chalk. Cras comes from cré, which means chalk. So chalky soil, heat, a good maturity, and then this wine is very fine and elegant, as all Beaune Premier Cru, but with a very, very big potential of aging. And we produce, it's a small cuvée for us. We produce every year between 2,400 bottles, 200 cases. And while I'm keeping the floor, I would like to invite all of our guests to come to see our site. As you can see, the facade behind me. After the renovation work, they can come and visit and see all the trials that Louis Pasteur he did in the end of the 19th century. And I hope there will be a new Pasteur who is going to find a vaccine in order to get us out of this mess. Thank you.
Well, you just prayed for it and it just appeared. Apparently today they have a vaccine. So let's cross our fingers for that. And when we are all going to be able to make use of this vaccine, we will come visit you.
Thank you.
Would love to see that. What about you, Dirk? I'm sure you have a wine that you want to present as well.
Yeah, actually I had a tasting just before we went into the web tour. So I've got it here on my table, and it's the single block Pinotage. You know, it's proudly South African Pinotage. It's a blend between Pinot Noir and Cinsault. But the beauty of this specific site is that 10 years ago, I really realized that this specific site is different from our other plots. Smaller berries, good skin to juice ratio, but also it's very much maritime influence. A lot of people, when they get to the farm, I tell them it's maritime influence. They say, how's it possible? I can't even feel the ocean. I say, normally get in my vehicle, let's go up the hill. We call it a bucky. So we get in the bucky, we drive up the hill. And when we get on top of the hill, we have to hold onto each other because the wind's pumping. And you can feel the cold Atlantic. And the beauty of these vines, they slot into an old soil, as we spoke about this afternoon. It's slotting into shale. Shale is something that you most probably will get very little of in the rest of the world. But it's a beautiful soil. It gives us fruit intensity. And the wine is a proper premium Pinotage, you know, small scale, like Dimitri also said, you know, small scale connoisseur's product. People buy it, they age it forever. And that's the beauty of Pinotage, is the aging ability. And it's a young varietal, but we're starting to drink the 30, 35-year-olds, and they're just beautiful, you know, that beautiful red plum color, almost purple. And then that tannin structure that you will never forget. So yeah, proudly South African, but very close to our hearts.
Well, that's very interesting. I actually have a bottle of that wine, the 07 vintage. Not that wine, but a Pinotage from L'Avenir from 07, presented by the previous winemaker, and I'm still keeping it, waiting for it to pop up on my table when it's finally right.
It's still a juvenile. You can keep it forever. I can almost tell you. You can 2007, another 10 years, then you can only start to think of opening up. So when you buy Pinotage, buy enough.
Right now, good. That's a good suggestion. We are soon gonna go over to the questions. However, I would like our viewers to get to know you just a little bit better. On a personal note, Dirk, if you got to choose another wine region in the world to make wine, which one would you pick? This is like it's just one word, basically.
Okay, if I think about the chat that we had this afternoon, I would say Central Otago. You know, I think I would love to. Yeah, I would love to farm on young soils to see what it's like. You know, but also for me, Pinot Noir, it's difficult. It's difficult like Pinotage. And if you can really master it, there's nothing better than climbing a mountain when there's no trail, and when you get to that summit, you know, it's awesome. And the rewards is just awesome.
Great pick. I'd love to taste Central Otago Pinot.
Beautiful
yeah,
wines.
They're really nice. What about you, Emmanuel? Who would you say was your and your father's role model when it came to conversion into biodynamics?
Oh, no, we've been taught by a famous guy which was François Boucher. So it was the guy that we followed at this time. Now he's dead today, of course. But it was the one who came gently. He was very shy, but you know he convinced us, and it worked properly. And as I told you, this is how we decide to follow all his saying. So yes, I think the principles of being winemaker, you're meeting people and getting ideas out of this, and you're making choice out of this. So yes, I think this guy will make us change for the current case, for many current cases.
It's always good to have role models, I think, or at least mentors in some way. Gregory, there's one thing that puts your wine region aside from the others. You only make white wine. Do you miss making red wine?
In another life.
It's hard, eh? You can't really do anything about it.
At La Roche, we are dedicated to the Chardonnay in Chablis.
In Chablis, good.
He's missing doing some rosé.
Ooh, how are you gonna make that work? And Dimitri,
Yes.
you're originally from Greece. Have you ever made wine there? And would you ever want to go back and pursue that? And which one is your favorite Greek grape?
Okay. Do you want me to be fired from Champy or what? What is this question? No, it's a joke. I worked in Greece in another century, but I didn't like it. At this period, there was it was very industrial and table wines. But right now in Greece, there is very qualitative wines. Personally, I think the Greeks, they understood how to do white wines. They have some difficulties about the reds. And my favorite variety, Greek variety, is Assyrtiko. It could be, it's a very fresh and when there is an interesting subsoil and climate, like Santorini, for example, volcanic minerality, you can have Assyrtiko and you can have this freshness at the same time potential of aging. So it's my choice.
Nice. So you all got to, yeah.
But my religion is Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in Burgundy.
Everyone hear that? Monsieur Lecha and Monsieur Durand? Yeah, good. So guys, we're going to go over to the Q&As, but before that, we had a little technical issue in the beginning. So the survey we were presenting at the beginning did not show up. So if you don't mind just taking a little minute to fill in the form, it's going to take you about 20 seconds, and then we're going to go over to the Q&A. Okay, so let's get over to the Q&As. I have a few questions here. I have a question from Claude Lalonde and Emmanuel. What do you really think of HVE level 1 and 2?
Well, I think it's a first step before getting organic and biodynamic today. When you are controlling those specific, when you have a certification on those methods, you are controlled. You have to show everything you're doing, the way you're doing, and so on. And I think moving firstly in the HEV process is a good way to get or to know the impact on different actions. So it's not as efficient, as interesting as organic culture, but I think it's a first step in the right direction. So thanks to this, people are getting educated to what is going to be the result of every action that they have. So I think it's a good thing.
Let's see, Gregory. Question to you from Cécile Faure. If a vineyard is conducted with the use of chemicals, how does the transition to organic? How should the transition to organic go? Is the environment ready to this drastic change overnight?
So it's okay?
Yeah.
So the term of transition is important, because when you step by step, you need to convert your vineyard. It's right for the soils, but it's right also for the vineyard and for the vines. That means you need time, you need observations. Chemicals, it's when you have a problem. It's like for us. That's why it's not the last 3 years. We don't use any chemicals because we have like our positive list. We don't use any antibiotics. We don't use any herbicides, and we do analysis in each wines to detect if you have some chemicals. Yes, and we don't have because we use like homeopathical dose of chemical when we use that. That's all. But what is important, it's not. I think there is not always or white ways or a black one. That means there is like a gray philosophy. It's like us every morning. When you wake up, you don't have to take a book to say, okay, this morning I will be honest, I will be kindly with all the people I met. That means it's a philosophy. And the global philosophy needs to take care in terms of sustainable development of the perennity of our activity. So that's why we have to take care of the vintage conditions. If you have rainfall every day, and you have to take with only contact coupons like or copper or sulfur, sometimes you have to spray 18 or 19 times per year. That means in terms of balance of oil consumption and water consumption, and also for the soil compaction, it's not good at all. It's why the term of philosophy is good because it's not only a positive list or like means it's not. You need to be over this, and you have to take many things in condition. But you need always a lot of observation, and you need time.
Growers who use chemicals should be the ones to pay for a chemical use mentioned on their label, instead of wine growers who do well paying for an organic certification.
I didn't get it. Can you repeat, please? Can you make it? Yes.
What do you say about people claiming that the wine growers who use chemicals should be the one to pay for a chemical use mentioned on their label? Instead of wine growers who do well paying for an organic certification?
I think, if I understand
Tricky question.
Yes. For example, here you have this pictogram. So it's, do you see it? It's the
that's
green
actually
thing.
the only thing we see.
Yes. So we have to, I think when you are certified, you are paying, and of course you have to understand that it's your choice, and you are getting to a voluntary path. So you have to prove by yourself that you have an independent organism who is doing audits, so you have to pay, and then you have to pay for labels and this and that. I think the problem is not completely, I don't know what is the difference between the guy with the chemicals.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tricky one.
Tricky, yes.
I agree. I do have another question here for Dirk, though. You were talking about the importance of keeping the floors moist. How do you get there with the water shortage in recent years?
Yeah, luckily, if you look at Lavinier and most of the properties in the Stellenbosch area, it's known for premium production of grapes. So yes, we had troubles with water, but we've got a very good water strategy in place in South Africa. Most of the farmers that farm in South Africa do have storage capacity, and like with Lavinier, we built new reservoirs, we built new channels. We've really tried to channel all the water to where it should go, and then the other thing is also we farm for quality. So at the end of the day, We don't use as much water as somebody would use when they do farm for crop or for bigger co-op kind of style of wines. So that was in our benefit. And then you need to make use of your cover crop very well. So you need, like I said, you need to use something where you can really cover those soils. What we had to do at one stage is with the cover crops that normally take a bit of water, is that we had to roll them much earlier so that they don't take too much water during the season. But when you roll them earlier, they're not as big, but still they give you the cover across the soil. At the end of the day, you need to keep your humidity, and you need to lessen the radiation in order to prevent carbon being lost, but also humidity being lost. And don't till. If you till, I promise you, you're gonna lose all your water.
We have a final question here from Claude, actually. Come back with a question. He's asking this to all the panelists. However, we're a bit short on time now, so I will ask Emmanuel to answer this question. When moving from conventional to bio, how does this impact profitability of the vineyards?
Well, it depends the kind of blocks. In fact, when we make the choice, we've seen very quickly that some blocks were able to change very quickly, and some vines were a bit stressed. Of course, you know, when we're starting to plant the ground, you're cutting some grass, some roots, some upper roots. You have also some blocks that are changing slightly in the taste, in the deepness, in some tasty sensation. Well, there's no simple rules. Every block adapts itself properly. You know, when you're organic and you're biodynamic, you try to follow the natural rhythms of the plant, and of course you're going to have some blocks that are going to be able to regulate themselves by themselves quite easily, of course, by the addition of all your practices behind this. But well, there's no generic conclusion about this. It's every blocks happen differently, but for sure you can have some weak blocks even if you're organic or conventional. So you have to adapt yourself, and this is the interesting thing, because when you're organic and biodynamic, you have to make your choice, you have to feel things, and you have to adapt your strategy compared to when you are working with chemicals. You can just spray whatever you want. You can follow a calendar that you can be right down on the 1st of January, and you're sure that you're going to have some berry at the end of the year. So yes, you have to adapt yourself. You have to look after different elements, and you're going to be more and more efficient step by step.
Nice. Dimitri, I saw you also have a comment.
I would like to complete the purpose of Emmanuel, and I can say there is a period of transition. There is 2 or 3 years when you go from conventional to organic and then to biodynamic. You have the yields who are getting a little bit down, and you have this kind of the vines. You have the transition, and you feel that the vines they are a little bit weak. And of course, you have to understand that everybody has to understand when you are doing sprayings with copper, let's say the crucial moment of the spraying are before and after the flowering, in order to be protected against the cryptogamic disease. So when you are spraying with copper, you have this kind of abortion phenomenon who gets you the yield down by, let's say, between 10 to 15%. So if you have a partial witness and the witness of organic, you can have a significant decrease of the yield in the parcel who is getting through organic cultivation. It was to complete the answer of Manuel.
Yeah, good. It seems like you guys really know each other because you all complement each other very well.
It's a good team.
That's true. Carmen, maybe you would like to conclude this session with a little sum up.
Yes, sure. We're still looking up for the right way to highlight all these efforts. The labels are not enough to reflect all these more philosophical or holistic approaches. Our goal is to have a readable progress trajectory for our customer and partners to let everybody know. For our parts, to remain in a dynamic of continuous improvements, to be able to face the new challenges. And there's still work to do.
That is true. It absolutely is more work to do. A huge thank you to all our viewers and listeners today, and of course to Julie, Titia, Claire, and Hélène, who managed the back office part of our sessions. And if you enjoyed today's session, we have one more session next week, which is all about rosé wines. There are specific terroirs, well, it's not just pink, it's a lot more to it than just that. So please stay with us for next week's session at 4 Central European time as well. Thank you very much to all the winemakers who joined us today and all you viewers.
Thank you. See you.
Thank
you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.